viewers. Once again, this is the 4 o'clock insights on KCAA Radio 106.5 FM. Also, if you're still tuned in on AM, it's 1 or 10:50 AM. Thank you for tuning in. As usual, this is the James Kane Experience, and I'm your host, James Kane, and my inner circle.
Skittles.
The boss.
Bear with us. This is another test runs at the James Bocane Studios, but we will also still be in KCAA Studios. But let's see how this goes. As normal, there's a lot going on, so I know I must give you a thank you and a round of applause for listening to me. You could be doing anything else right now, but you're tuned in to the 4 o'clock insights. So let's get into our show today. Our show is going to be about what actually is street credibility or street cred, street smarts versus book smarts or educational advancement. I myself say they all three can go together on how a person applies them. But first, we want the boss to give us the definition of street smarts.
Street smart is like practical intelligence. You know how to read people, situations, and environments, usually in first hand perspectives.
I agree with that.
Street smarts. It's sad to say we don't even know who invented the term. We don't even know who invented street smarts. It's because most people that came from the streets, they gave it this name because it showed urban or at that time black communities that were underdeveloped, impoverished, or even the projects. So street smarts is something that you didn't know that's what you were learning. It was an experience walking down the street, living in this environment, and we gave it a technical street smart. So, in my perception of street smarts is a group of individuals in the community that went to the community center or lived in the same apartment buildings and grew up together. You had a lot of different things going on at that time because back in the 70s, everyone used to go hang out at the liquor stores.
Yep.
You had the winos in the back on
Yep.
crates drinking Wild Irish Rose, Thunderbird with Kool-Aid. Um, it was so many
King
different
Cobras.
alcohols and way of thinking. But some of these men back there was not just bums as we call it today. They were actually the mailman. There were your sisters and brothers, daddies back there. This was something that black men used to do to escape their mental, it wasn't mental illness, but today we know traumas, things they was going through, racism, hardships, the difference, having multiple families, raising your kids. These were their escape from reality. And that was how the young kids as we was growing up in elementary school, junior high, and high school would go and see some. Oh yeah, Mr. Thomas is back there. You used to get laughs when your friend's mother would come. Hey, Johnny, bring your butt to the house and this that. But these men were hard workers. They had skills, but a lot of times their skills was not appreciated. It's because they got low wages. They had to work for will just say Uncle Tom or Uncle
Yeah.
Tommy. So Uncle Sam. It was a lot of uncles for a black man, but we wasn't related to none of them. So these terms we use, street smarts. These were the kids that could fight good. Some of the time, they would go to juvenile hall or they would go to prison. Now, prison, sadly to say, is when you're in prison, when there's something going on in the prison, most of the time, the warden or lieutenants or whoever, they don't go pick the educated guy to talk about what's going on in the prisons. They go get really, it's sad to say, the less educated. Because even though he's less educated, he could fight. And he wasn't on drugs anymore. Back then, he probably had 20-inch arms. He was extremely physical. And he
Yeah.
looked at like he can take down a nation. And they would put him in front of the camera knowing that they were a little bit more educated than them because they were educated. They were taught. They went to think tanks to understand what do people think about in the streets. How do they think? What do they think? It's called psychology and it's called sociology. But at this time, people that were in the streets that had a fifth, sixth, or barely knew how to read, because a lot of people from the streets, if we want to use that term, when they went to prison, they graduated in prison. They learned how to read in prison. So when they was on the street, they really didn't understand the importance of reading because they didn't have time because they were too busy being the king of the streets. They didn't
Yeah.
really need that kind of intellect. All they needed was a Smith and Wesson, as they say in the rap music now. All they needed was to be on swole. All they needed was to place fear into those that's in their surrounding of that neighborhood. So they didn't need to know how to read a book. Now, those who knew and understood education, sometimes they were pressured because as they
Mhm.
went to school and their parents would tell them, you need an education, they seen these kids hanging out, having fun, driving at 16s, Mercedes Benz, hanging out to the next day. Now, when we say street smarts, we also have to look at the dysfunction because a lot of that right there was dysfunction. But everything has a function and a dysfunction. Education has its dysfunctions. A lot of racism. You, me and my daughter was just talking the other night when we was looking at DEI, and we did the math on it.
Mhm.
68% of women got hired in the last 2 years of DEI, but in the black community, only 2%. It
Wow.
went from 9% of employment to only adding 2%
Mhm.
to blacks that was employed with DEI. But let's get back to education and street cred. Now, street cred, well, no, this is what I would do. I'm not going to jump to street cred and education. I'm going to ask you, Skittles, how do you or what do you think about street smarts?
So street march is like the boss said, being is a skill and a willingness. It means you know how to handle real life situations, especially unpredictable ones or risky environments. You can read people and situations quicker, and you can avoid danger or know how to react if something goes wrong. And then you understand unspoken rules, how to move, talk, and act depending on the environment. It's about survival, let's be honest.
Yes, I would agree. Most of street smarts is how to survive. It's a experience that you go through that you understand in
Yes.
certain situations. When this car is moving kind of irate,
Mm-hmm.
take cover. It could be a drive-by. But it's sad to say that they pin drive-bys on the black American when the
Yes.
mobs back in the 20s was using it first. See, a lot of these things that they put on the black gang members today,
Yeah.
they learned it from their integration. And as we know, we just say the system.
Yep.
That's how they, and then they turned it into a black thing when it's not a black thing because blacks never created. It was just something that they took from someone else, another nationality, and used it. And like always, that nationality always take your your style of living and
Yes.
create it, market it for themselves to make money off of you. Which in capitalism, there's nothing wrong with it. So I are one of the ones I if I say a problem, I want to talk about a solution. And
Yes.
that's something that we need to talk about the solution and why in the black community we always letting people market us and then we get mad when we have the solution. Stop
Right.
it. We can we can conquer our fears, our problems, even though a lot of different nationalities are our enemies. But so what? If we love ourselves, treat ourselves right, and
Exactly.
use what they call street smarts, we can overcome all our barriers. Let's move on to street cred. Now, street credibility is basically street smarts that people, yes. Oh,
I disagree a little bit. I believe that street credibility isn't really a intelligence, it's more of a reputation you have.
Mm-hmm.
It can go along with street smarts, but you can be book smart with street credibility. It's like it just means that people from the outside world really respect you in an authentic way. And you're like experience kind of like street smart, but you're not intelligence in it. You're just like it's just a reputation on you, which can also happen in school. Like you can have a reputation, but street credibility is more on the streets where a lot of people know you for something instead of having the intelligence.
okay, thank you. Thank you. Now, I didn't get to say street credibility. The reason why I said street smarts is
Yeah.
because street it starts with street smarts to get the street credibility. You have to be in the streets. And
Mm-hmm.
you get street cred because people know you from that area, know you from them streets. And what it is it started off in rap. Like I said, it's always something to denounce blackness, to put you in a dysfunctional state of mind so people will see you like that. They don't want to see young blacks and black women and men in a positive role. That
And succeeding.
and a positive role that means movies, music, all these things that we take. You don't hear about street credibility or anything else when you're listening to jazz. Jazz was created out of black awareness,
And love.
black love, as my daughter keep saying on the side, black love. And that's why I said you have to have street smarts. Street smarts is an experience. Like Skittles was saying, that experience turned into credibility that we know this guy. We
Yes.
know Big Johnny. You remember the hood? See, when I grew up, you had the names like Mud Dog, Southside Ray, Jelly Bean, Peanut Butter and Jelly. Your nickname was something that you did or that neighborhood remembered you by. One Punch. meaning you was knocking everybody out. Before there was a Debo, there was a one punch. Lights out. We had all these different names, and these were just young black men around the neighborhood that a lot of times protected the neighborhood. You couldn't come in
Yep.
that neighborhood. And if we went somewhere like skating, whatever, we all was from that same community. So of course we would stand up for each other. Now they call that a gang. So that's where street credibility come from. But now there's so many people that's not even in their neighborhoods that they, so how could you be credible and experience when your family took you out of that environment? And we could ask, why do you want to go back? Why do you want to go back to an area that your family took you away from? It's nothing wrong with advancing and progressing in something. And most of the times it's yourself. You need
Yep.
to progress within yourself and have that integrity that yes, it's good to be from somewhere else. We have the same thing: street smart, street credibility, East Coast, West Coast. That became a rival. Why? Because of the lifestyles that are different on the East Coast and on the West Coast. But now a lot of East Coast have the same gang names as the
Yeah.
West Coast. So that West Coast vibe has hit the East Coast, but as blacks, we still have that when we don't love ourselves. So street smarts and street credibility is something we can take and make it positive and take this negative outlook that they have put on those terms. Now,
Yes.
let's get into education. What's the definition of book smarts?
Book smart is academic or learned intelligence. It's kind of like intelligence gained through studying, reading, and formal education. I believe that book smart can go along with street smarts, but it can also be a separate thing. Because you can have a teacher that's willing to go out in the streets and teach the people with street smart so that more people can be able to be book smart, and the teacher could have street smart and book smart at the same time. But book smart can also only be in a school environment if no one is willing to learn from that teacher.
Thank you. Now, Skittles, what are your thing on street credibility and book smarts?
I think, and with those, I feel like you need both. And, you know, in this society, I feel like you need both because I grew up with street smarts, but I also grew up with book smarts. My mama wasn't having that. Because I had both of both words, I I understand both, but I do crave knowledge. So because I got the opportunity to, have my street smarts, um, I kind of was aware when I went to high school, when I went to middle school. It helped me. It helped me in of course, in high school, like I said, but college, not as much because I was online. But I knew if a student moved a certain way, nah, I'm not messing. I'm not messing with that student.
Hmm.
If the crowd moved a certain way, I'm moving the opposite way. You know.
Yes, that's smart. See,
Hmm.
that's smart all levels
Yes.
because street smart sometimes we give it an A
Yeah.
is because we don't want book smarts. Book smarts is a discipline.
Yes.
And not saying it's not dysfunctional and not saying that everyone that goes to college and get these masters are successful. In the
Right.
black community, if we gauged our success off our education, we wouldn't be like we are today. We probably still be in school. We
Mhm.
probably still have a lot of owners rather than consumers.
Mhm.
We probably have a difference in how we view ourselves. because education is important, but I believe integrity,
Yep.
mannerisms, and who you are is more important.
Yes.
It's because you come from your community and go to that college. So you take something to give to education. You take what you learn from your parents, you take what you learn from your friends, you take what you learn from your teachers that come from a different environment, and you bring it to college. College just takes those skills and uplift them. That's why they call it higher education. Now, a lot of times you leave high school and learn what they taught you in high school. Once you get to college, it's not the same. Now they talk about everyone's in the uproar because they're taking books, history. Well, my perception is why? It's because they never really talked about our history anyway. That's our job. Our job is to show
True.
the world our history because it's ours.
Yeah.
Every nationality does it. Europe is not going to let you take over their history. They're going to tell you their history from their eyes. That's why most of the time in America you have English, you have Spanish, you have Italian, their
Mhm.
history. Jews, they're going to always, when you pick up a Bible, you're going to read their history. You're going to read their history. They're going to show you things of even the Germans. They're going to have their history, and then it's the Jewish way of seeing how they felt the Germans treated them. So everyone has their history that they talk about. Now, our history, most of the times, is going to be about slavery. It's going to be about some kind of dysfunction in our environment. But we do have certain movies like Pursuing of Happiness. We had a lot of movies, but per se, people of other nationalities view us by what the perception is out there. Even when blacks come from different countries, they come in more educated. They think that we're just over here playing, that we're, you know, Jamaicans, Africans,
Yep.
Brazilians. That's one of the reasons why they don't identify with black Americans because they I guess they believe we're spoiled. Some,
Yeah.
not all, but we don't have time to go into that, but that is a part of book smarts.
Yeah. I agree.
How they speak, proper English, how
Mhm.
you set up your table, how do you eat with your silverware. When I grew up, before that, the 60s and the 70s, I didn't grow up in the 60s, but I'm just using the 60s. There was a certain kind of way you ate at a table. The family came together, shut off all your devices that they had at that time. Even if your dad worked, he would come in, and they were hard workers back then. Oh man, just think now you don't even. All you gotta do is take the trash cans out. There was people
Yep.
that had to come pick those trash cans up and put them in the trash truck, jump on the back of it, and all day long, manual labor was extreme back then. See, now we don't even think that much. We just turn on AI, Chat GPT. So enough of my ranting. This is going to be a short show today because we're not in studio. So I'm gonna give Skittles and the boss their view on book smarts. Skittles, you have anything more on book smarts or street credibility?
No, I think you are correct. For street smarts, for example, if someone tries to a scam you, a street person, a street smart person can recognize the signs and avoid getting tricked, right? So
Yes.
now let's talk about. I'm gonna give you an example of a street, street cred. Let's say a rapper who grew up in the struggles, they talk about my, I have more street credibility than someone who didn't live that life at all. So I just feel like the key difference between both of them, street smarts, what you know and how you move, and the other one would be what people think about you.
Hmm.
I just feel like you should have both, no matter what. And if you do have book smarts, that is great. But if you know somebody that have street smarts, listen to them.
That's great. I'll agree that you should apply all three because all three is experience, all three is a discipline, and all three is education. It's how you apply it. Because wherever there's function, there's dysfunction. Wherever there's happiness, there's sadness.
Yes.
But let's turn it over to the boss because I see she's over here itching and she has
Uh
something to say.
oh.
Um, I feel like both.
Coming to the mic.
I feel like both street smart and
Mm-hmm.
book smart is important in different but the same way. Because book smart, you can be experienced in reading, but when you go into streets, how are you going to be experiencing that just from a book?
Yes.
That's like saying you read about gun violence, but when you get inside actual gun violence, how are you going to be able to get out of it with only a book's knowledge? A book's knowledge can take you far in life. I'm not saying
Yeah.
that, but experience is really what you need because experience can turn into wisdom.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Wonderful, wonderful. Great topic because
Mm-hmm.
I know it's talked about a lot, but I wanted to touch on it today because we needed to acknowledge that's a part of our culture that needs to be addressed, and no one really addresses it. We're too busy thinking about entertainment and sports, and um, who's the baddie of the year, or all this things that are reality shows. When we need to just get back to talking to each other, understanding, and let's have cookouts and uplift our people because other people are being uplifted. So it's not saying that we against anyone else. We just want to love ourselves like other people love themselves.
Yes.
So I just want to open up this space and this time on the 4 o'clock insights on KCAA Radio 106.5, 1050 AM for a open forum for people to talk. Even if you disagree, we can talk about it and see if we can help you see things at a different angle. And we also talk about how we can see things from your angle. But we're going end here and say if your life is not going right, restructure, refocus, regroup on what you have left. Thank you. This is the James Kane Experience. Peace.